I'm starting to get worried about pensions in the October 2025 budget. If you think back to October 2024, there was a lot of talk about the potential for Rachel Reeves to limit tax relief for people earning the higher rate of tax and paying into pensions. And that was just one of the many concerns, with some people saying the triple lock was under threat and others talking about the means testing of the state pension, that kind of thing. I'd love to know what you think's going to happen. Now, the reason I'm getting nervous is because of how her options have reduced significantly. So let me draw you a diagram. So if we split people into four groups, there are people who receive wages, salaries. There are people who receive benefits, and there are people who receive pensions. I'll talk about the fourth group in a moment. Okay, so let's have a look at these individually. So when we were worried about our pensions in October 2024, we're looking at what Rachel Reeves had as options for filling holes in the budget, really, and getting some more revenue into government. And we knew that there was a very strong promise of the election that the Labour Party would be in favour of the working people and that they would not raise taxes on working people, and that's remained something that they are quite strong on in their comms. And I believe it will be difficult for them to break that promise personally. Now, what are we talking here? So we're talking, income tax and NI. So what will happen, 100% will happen, I believe, is that the amounts where we start paying tax, where we start paying standard rate tax and start paying higher rate tax will be frozen. So then tax allowances will be frozen. And that means because the price of everything's gone up, most of our wages have gone up. Therefore, if the tax rate, that the tax allowance stays the same, we effectively all pay more tax. So it's kind of a way of raising taxes by stealth, but it's not the same as saying, let's change the 20% tax rate to the 22% tax rate. That is much more newsworthy item and will definitely go against their promises to not uh, increase taxes on working people. Okay, so if we strike that one through for me as being one where they won't be able to do much in terms of changing how much revenue they get from that area. Let's look at benefits then. So I think back in October 24, when Rachel Reeves did the budget, she had a plan, and that was the fact that they'd seen personal independence payments had risen astronomically since the pandemic, and therefore they thought this is an area they could tinker with. So they will change the rules around receiving personal information, personal independence payments, and significantly reduce the amount the government needs to pay out. So that was the plan all along, I think. But what happened is they obviously had a backbench revolt, which meant that Rachel's plans for personal independence payments didn't go through in the way that she wanted them to. We now have the same big hole in the budget, and we weren't able to fix that with benefits. Okay, so that means we have pensions left, and that's why I think this year in particular, I'm really nervous about what's going to happen around pensions, pensioners, and tax related to pensions as well. Now, I did say there was four categories, and I'm going to draw these up here because they're not interrelated. If you look at all these, they all overlap, don't they? We have people who earn wages and receive benefits. We have people who receive benefits and pensions, which is the state pension, and we have pensions and people who work part time as well. Okay, but this group up here don't really overlink with any of these. Okay, and these are the people who derive their income from assets. Or another way to describe these are non-working, super rich. So these are non-working super rich, and they derive their income from assets. So what do we mean by that? I mean, they own masses of land, they own lots and lots of different businesses, they own lots and lots of debt. And that could be our debt, or it could be companies' debts, or it could be even countries' debts. So when a government issues a bond, these people buy these bonds up and derive lots and lots of revenue from them. Okay, so these are the super rich that don't work and they own the assets. Now, I think these are the untouchables personally. I'm not saying that I approve of that. I'm just saying I do think they're untouchables. And the reason I think that is the way political parties work, in my opinion, is that to influence policy, which is what they want to do, they need to be in power. To get into power, they need to win elections. To win elections, they need significant budgets to be able to promote their policies and communicate to the public. And the only way that they're going to get the money to do that is from the super rich. So these make massive political donations to political parties, and any government that really tried to attack this group by taking more money out of their earnings, they would quickly find in the next election that all these political donations would go to another party, and they would lose power pretty rapidly. So these remain fairly untouchable, in my opinion. I'd love to know what you guys think. So back to pensions. Where do we think pensions could potentially get hit? So let's have a look at what some of these particular options and threats that I'm talking about might be. Now, I'm not going to go through every single one, just some of the ones that I've read more about recently. So if we list them out first, we've got pension commencements, lump sum. We've got tax-free allowances. We have triple lock, and we've also got means testing. So let me talk about each one of these briefly and see what you guys think. Okay, so the pension commencement lump sum. So each time I take an amount out of my pension savings that I've saved for all my life, 25% of that comes tax free at the moment, which is great for me. It's fantastic. Now, what the options are for governments here is that they could remove this completely. And they could say there's no such thing as a pension commencement lump sum tax-free amount. You are just going to pay tax on all your pensions. They could obviously cap it to say you will only get tax on the first X amount of that. They might change the rate from 20% down to 10%. So they've got some options there, and each of them could significantly increase the taxes that are going into the treasury. What about tax-free allowances? So say I'm a working 40% tax rate payer. The amount I pay into my pension will be effectively tax-free at the point that I pay it in. Now, this amount here is fairly significant, as you can see, 40% of your salary. So when you're a higher rate taxpayer and you're paying 40%, when you then come to claim your pension, you're probably claiming that at more like 20%. Therefore, you've made a significant benefit in tax. Now, this could be reduced if the government decided say to change this 40% tax rate to what's commonly talked about is 25%, then that would raise significant funds for the government, because there'd be less amount tax saved. Of course, it would discourage people from saving large amounts into the pensions. For those who are on a 20% tax rate, however, it would actually improve their position, because the talk is that this would be a fixed 25% tax rate, whether you're a 20% or a 40% tax rate payer. Lots of complexity around doing this, but that's another one that's often talked about. Now, the triple lock says that your pension, state pension, will go up either by one of these things, either inflation, or it will go up 2.5%, or it will go up by average wages. And the good thing about triple lock, it's the higher of these three, which means generally pensioners are always moving slightly ahead because it's the larger of these three. So if you have a real poor average wages year, then the triple lock won't be impacted, because it'll go up by one of the higher amounts. So that's one potential for them to do. Triple lock is pretty difficult to play with, because it's been a promise that's been around a long time. I'd like to know what you think. And the last one is means testing. So at the moment, if you are a multimillionaire pensioner, I'd say you get a private pension of, let's say, £6 million per year. You will also, from the government, receive kind of 11,500. I'm not sure what the exact amount is right at the moment, from the government, as well as your £6 million a year. And some people say that what the government will do is cap this, say that if you earn over X amount, you will no longer be entitled to a state pension. Now, when I've done votes on this on YouTube, people have tended to say people who earn over £100,000 a year from a private pension potentially should be impacted by this. Anyone less than it should be impacted or not impacted. That's where the kind of voting is at. But at the moment, it's there's no cap on that, and everyone is entitled to it. So that's potentially somewhere where they bring it in. Now, if they did bring that in at, say, £30,000, then that would have a massive impact on a lot of people who are receiving £30, topping it up with their 11,500, and coming out with a reasonable amount for them and their family to live on. If it's £100,000, then the £11,000 obviously doesn't mean quite as much. So I don't know what you guys think about it, but there's options there. If we go back to this page, that's what worries me. That's out of play. That's potentially out of play. That's now out of play because of the backbenchers. Doesn't leave much else. Let me know what you think.